And here we are. It's another episode of the podcast of Still. And today I'm joined by Kerry Callen, artist and writer. Sir, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I've been a fan of your work for many years, especially the Super-Antics that we will talk about soon. But
Thank
many
you.
smiles I've had on my face over the years have come from your artwork. So first of all, thank you for that. Um, it's a wonderful thing to be able to make somebody smile, and you've done it to thousands of people around the world. So, if you could, to begin with, Sarah, share your origin story with me and the listeners.
My origin story.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
I grew up in the hills of the Ozarks in Arkansas. So I didn't have any exposure to art really. Um, Everybody were farmers or that type of thing. And getting my haircut. Sometimes we drive into town, which was, several miles away. And getting my haircut in a barber shop, I discovered comics probably when I was like 4 or 5 or so. And my mom would let me buy some. So the only exposure I had to art as a kid was an occasional comic book. Um, we actually subscribed to a Sunday paper from a town far away, which had comic strips in it. And I love the Sunday comic strips, they're big in color
Mm.
and whatnot. And also my older brother would occasionally bring home Mad magazines, coverless Mad magazines. I have no idea where he got them. After we were grown, I asked him where he got him. He said, I don't know. I don't remember. He became a carpenter. So he said he drew a lot as a kid, but he didn't continue to do it. Um, so those are my influences was comic books, Mad Magazine, and Sunday papers. We didn't have, I was thinking about it, and there was a museum that was in a nearby town, but it was a gun museum. So it didn't have any art in it. From what I remember, I may have just been there once.
I mean, well,
So
that's.
I grew up loving that stuff, basically.
I mean, two very sort of different forms of comic entertainment, being sort of your classic comics and mad comics. I can remember going to America for the first time and finding Mad Comics on a newsstand, and that was big for me. It's a
Mhm.
comic that we didn't get here, so to
Mhm.
get my very first Mad comic was a big moment. So I know that was for pop culture and sort of people
Mhm.
finding their way in comics. Mad was a stepping stone into the world of comics for many.
Hmm. Interesting.
So when you were you were reading those comics as a youngster, what were your go-to stories that you would read, Kerry?
Well, I didn't have a lot of them, so I read the same ones over and over and over. A lot of them, when we went to town again, they had new comics in a drugstore, but there was a five and dime that had coverless ones, or the ones that had the titles cut off, because back then, um, and a lot of people know this, but if comics didn't sell, they could be returned to the distributor for credit, but they didn't have to return the entire comic because shipping cost a lot of money. So they either just had to cut off the title or they had to remove the cover and send those back and say, these didn't sell, give us our money back. And then, of course, it was illegal, but stores did it everywhere in the US. Go ahead and sell them at a reduced price, like for a nickel or something instead of 12 cents that they were at the time. So a lot of times uh, initially my mom would just let me buy those old issues, and people found out that I like comics, and people would occasionally give me a comic. The first Spider-Man comic I read was an annual coverless. Well, actually, it was missing several of the first pages, but it
Oh,
was a Ditko story with Spider-Man and Doctor Strange teaming up, and I loved that. Um, I read that a lot. The first new comic I ever got was Teen Titans #1,
wow.
and I read that a lot. I loved it. Um, I still have it. It was new when I bought it, but now using it as a kid, and loving it as a kid, it doesn't have a cover anymore, and it's got tape on it and all that kind of stuff. So I loved any comic I could get a hold of. I learned to like DC a little more as a young kid because I discovered that Marvel stories were continued a lot of times. And
Mm,
since we just went into town once every couple of 3 months, um, I didn't like not being able to finish the story. So I would buy DCs because I knew they would probably be self-contained at the time. I mean, eventually they started doing the more continued stuff too. Um, Trying to think. Oh, we owned in the little town we lived in, um, population 246. We actually owned the general store there that had it didn't have comics or magazines or anything, just some of the basics for the people
mm.
around. Also, feed in the back of the store for cattle and such.
Wow.
But one time, and we would get shipments sometimes of supplies to put on the shelf. I don't know where we ordered them from or where they came from. I don't remember what it was, but I remember opening the box and it had a bunch of newspapers all stuffed in it just to help pad it.
Mhm.
And there was a comic, there was a Mickey Mouse comic in it that was used as stuffing in that box. Um, and again, it was like a comic, it was like a treasure. So that's another one I read a lot.
I like how sort of comics found you then in a way, sort of
Well,
in your way into comics. How did your love for comics back then turn into this career of writing and creating artwork?
Well, I saturated my brain with that as much as I could as a kid. Also, where I went to school, there was no art. There was no art classes all through grade school, junior high, high school. Didn't have, I went to college and then I had art classes then. Um, but I just love that stuff. It was so different than the rest of life. You know, we would be out, hauling hay or feeding the cattle or plowing the garden or, um, so I felt a little bit like an oddball because I was about the only one around. I did have one friend that would read comics sometimes, um, but being kind of the only person that did
Mm.
that, it just solidified with me. It's like this is stuff I love. I should mention my mom could draw really well, but she never had really the opportunity because, life life gets in the way, things you have to do. Um, so I had the luxuries that she didn't, that I had more probably free time to just hone my skills. And I didn't know anything else. You asked why I focused on that kind of thing is because that's all I knew. I would see the good thing about comics, I will say this, is that I think I learned how to use words and pictures together well. And if you look at so many different things, advertising, that uses words and pictures. I ended up working at Hallmark cards for decades, and that's words and pictures together. So I was actually kind of honing a skill beyond just comics or mad. It was just figuring out how to make the best package, because you got to tell a joke well, you know. Um, so maybe that answers your question of why I loved it. I just loved it because it was something I related to and didn't see much of, and it made it more precious.
I like how sort of you found that passion for art though, and you it was something that was special for you, whether it was going to the shop and finding comics or comics finding you, and then you found your artistic journey when you went off to college and then working for Mad Comics. How was that's like full circle for you? What was that like when you finally got news that you'd be working for them?
Well, it was when Mad renumbered at number one, and this was back in what was it, 2008 or 2018. Um, they found my stuff online and liked it. I started drawing the Super-Antics
Mhm.
just I had a dream about um, being invincible, like Superman, and I got a bullet in my ear, and I thought that's kind of funny. I should turn that into a strip. And I thought it was funnier if it was Superman who got the bullet in his ear. And then I just had to name it something just so it looked like a comic. Um, and I named it Super-Antics. And I mean, I had the luxury now compared to many years in the past. I can actually put stuff on the internet and people would find it, and enjoy it. People seem to like that. So then I did another one because I keep thinking of ideas, not the ideas kind of come to me a lot just because, again, that's what my brain is saturated with even now, comics and such. So I did another Super-Antics when I thought of something or the thought came to me, and then I just kind of kept doing them just because they were fun and people seemed to like them. So I think that was the main thing that Mad responded to. Um, and they contacted me when they were kind of revamping things because on the revamp that they started over with number one, they actually had a little comic book section in it, which was nice, I thought, because it was kind of a throwback to the original Mad, which was a comic book.
Mm.
Um, so I did several things for them. I think in the free comic book day Mad comic this year, I have art on the cover, but I think I also have a few things on the inside
Oh,
too.
wow.
So you can see more of my work that way.
Yes, I'm looking forward to adding that to my collection. I can remember seeing that Super Antics one you said that came from that dream where he's getting the bullet out of his ear. It's classic Superman comics, but you've got that element of mad comedy and silly pranks and just fun, adding more humor to already a sort of a funny medium. And yeah, whenever there's a new Super-Antics comes out, it does get shared all over the place, and they're always a joy to see. Do you have favorite characters that you create for Super-Antics? Superman appears a lot, so I thank you for that, as obviously he is my favorite. But do you have any others that are in your head all the time?
I don't know if I do. Batman's in there just because I've always liked Batman. Um, a character I love is the Golden Age Adam, which a
Mm.
lot of times people don't know who he is. I just think he's so goofy and cool looking at the same time. Um, People get on to me sometimes or make comments about how I pick on the Golden Age Flash a lot.
Quite a
And
bit.
that just kind of happened by accident. The first one I wrote with him on it, um, was they're having a meal and Superman says, okay, we're done. Flash, time to do the dishes. And he's like, well, why do I always have to do the dishes? And it's like, because you got super speed. And it's like, so what? I still have to do everything that anybody would have to do. I just do it quicker. And you may have seen it. He says
I have.
Batman can do it in 15 minutes and Wonder Woman does it in 20 minutes. Does that mean Batman always has to do it? But I needed a way to end it. I just thought conceptually that was kind of interesting to think about people of super speed. It's not magic. They still have to physically do all
Mm.
the things. And I just found that interesting. I needed an ending for it. So I just kind of made fun at the Flash at the end, just to end the strip in a funny way. And then I think of the Flash and Superman was racing. I just thought it would be funny for him to get hit with a pie in the
What in the
face.
face?
Anyway, it just happened by accident. I love the Golden Age Flash, so it's not like I have anything against him. It just kind of happened,
I
I
mean,
just kind
yeah,
of with the flow of how things happened.
but it works. I mean, Superman, as always, he has raced Flash over the years, and for that situation, for it to end with a pie to the face, it was a perfect ending. So people always argue, is Superman faster or was the Flash faster? We may never know, but we do know that the Flash got pied by Superman. So I love the fact that I this we can get access to this art now that we can find on your website, and we can just enjoy it because the colors are so vibrant when you create your artwork. What is that process for you? So you get the idea for a Supermantics little comic. What is the process for you? How does that go from your wonderful mind to being created?
Well, I started creating everything digitally, just because I was kind of behind the ball, eight ball in this about behind the eight ball. Is that the right phrase there? I was kind of behind compared to other artists that I wasn't working digitally as far as drawing. I would color
Mm.
in Photoshop, but I eventually started drawing everything digitally. So my process is I draw it all, and then I ink it, and then I color it all in Photoshop. And I like the bright color. I like the golden age art just in general, just because it has a simplicity and a boldness. It just appeals to me. So in Photoshop, then I had bright colors, and I developed a process to make them actually look like old comic book pages with yellowing, and you can see a bit of the dot. And
Mm.
um, there for a while, I kind of stopped doing this because it was a little bit distracting. But I would actually take a page and flip it and put it faintly on the whole thing, so it looks like the bleed through of the opposite page
Oh,
on a,
okay.
because a lot of times you'll see scans of comic book pages and you just
Mm.
barely see a faint image on the other side. Um, but it's just all Photoshop and the sensibility of liking aesthetically the bright, bold colors, and they're just easier to look at. I see artwork, modern artwork, which is fantastic, a lot of times in black and white, and sometimes the colors get so complex you lose the work of the inker, or the artist if they did the whole thing, because they do a lot of nice little rendering and stuff, and then the color overpowers it. So I like the color to be bright, but I don't like it to overpower the line work.
And I mean, yeah, but it jumps off whatever screen I'm looking at. That those colors really do pop. And I said, it's the laughs that they give. It's the tongue-in-cheek jokes. I think another one of my favorites is where Batman finally smiles for a photograph, and it turns out he's a he's
Oh,
he's a terrible smiler. It's things like that. It's little sort of inward jokes that members of people that love the DC universe are going to get those little Easter eggs, as it were. And you've referenced comics before. You've referenced some of Batman's more colorful costumes as well over the years. It's a wonderful insight into these characters that we adore. Do you have a favorite creation that you've made?
hmm. You know what I like, and I don't know. I like that Batman one because it explains why he doesn't smile. It's not because he's dark and mysterious. This is because he saw a photo of himself smiling and thought it looked terrible. I think some people can relate to that. Um, but one of my favorites, and this is just mean. It's just a mean one. I don't know why some of the mean ones make me laugh because I'm a nice person.
You are.
People tell me it's like, oh, you're one of the nicest people I know. But maybe this is why it's funny to me because it's not how I'm acting typically in real life. But the one where Superman is introducing the Spectre, and Spectre has his cape up like this because he does in the old comics. And then Batman says, hey, that's my gig. Don't do that. That's my thing. And then they all kind of go around the table doing this, and Green Lantern, beware my light, and all that kind of stuff. Um, and then it ended up with Flash being the joke at the end, him
Again.
ruining by doing kind of a bad one. And then Superman just says, "You ruin everything." I don't know why that hits me as funny, but that's one of my favorite ones.
It is. I mean, they're all they are fantastically just adorable, but they make me laugh as well. And I think another one of the first ones that I saw was Lois was on Superman's back, and
That was the girl before Lois.
oh, was it? Okay.
Well, in my head, it was, since she doesn't seem to make it through the strip.
No, she doesn't. But it's just the fact that it's Superman in a different way. He's very sort of a mean and callous and sort of doesn't take on people's baggage, as he says, and then just just dumps her off as he's saving her through. But it's different ways of going through and appreciating these characters, which is what I got a lot out from the Mad comics when I was finally able to read them. These spoofs. I grew up with movies like Naked Gun and Airplane, so to see that in comic form, it always makes me smile. And
I
Sorry.
will say this because I've read superhero parodies and stuff over the years, and something I try to avoid is doing humor because of how incompetent the hero is. There's
Mm.
something about that that has never it just hit me as maybe too easy, you know? So I don't know if you see that in my strips. I try not to make the heroes incompetent as much as just the situation itself is what's kind of hopefully funny.
They don't come across as, say, sort of, as you said, arrogant or foolish. They are still heroic. They're noble, but they have these sides to them. Sometimes that it's away from the public eye. So when we see the superheroes around the dinner table talking about doing the washing up, or we see them, you know, taking some downtime. But no, I appreciate the fact that you don't take that easy option to just make them look foolish. It's seeing these heroes that we adore in a different way. It's giving us more access to our heroes. It's like almost like reality TV where we get to see behind the scenes of how they live. So thank you for that.
Of course, I say that, and then you see the free comic book day about Superman ripping his costume open and burying his chest.
But
Or
that that's an iconic image of say you've done it for Superman and Wonder Woman, sort of where they rip the chest open, and it's an image that gets shared a lot across the internet, and I love to see it. I think originally though he had a hairy chest. Was that right? In one of the all.
Well, originally he didn't. I drew parody things of him, not him, because it was a parody. I mean, you couldn't see the S on his
Mm.
costume. You couldn't see if you look at his belt, it's blue instead of yellow. There wasn't a lot of the costume showing. But I drew it that and a female version um, that people like to call Wonder Woman, even though it's just a dark-haired woman, um, for Threadless. And they picked up Threadless is a company that prints shirts. Um, and they printed the guy one doing this, but they didn't print the female one, probably because it was probably considered more sexist. I had on an old time like 50s bra. It wasn't really
It was
small.
big.
But I think they probably viewed that one as sexist, even though that image, women seem to like it more than men do, just because it's almost a commentary on women, I think, to the women, about
Mm.
not being prepared to be a superhero, even though I am. Um, So I drew those, and he did not have hair, and he did not have nipples. And then when Mad wanted something like that, I said, "Well, why don't you just use? I'll just take it off Threadless, and you can use that." And they go, "Okay, that'd be great. Can you maybe push it a little farther?" And I was like, "I could give him hairy nipples." So there's actually kind of two versions of that floating around.
The variant ones, the sort of when you collect the whole set, that's the sort of thing.
Yes, yes.
So yes, we've mentioned it. Free Comic Book Day is coming up May the 4th this year, and you will be a part of that wonderful day. It's certainly it's an event that's gotten huge around the world. I'm pleased that it's getting more popular in England as well. And what was that news? How did that hit you when you found out you would be a part of this wonderful moment?
Well, I I found out kind of in a roundabout way, but I was thrilled to see it. It's fun. And I was also happy to find out I have some of the material inside the comic too. My art director at Mad mentions sometimes that she likes to bring up in meetings, DC meetings, how that we ought to just do a Mad Presents Super-Antics as a comic. Um, And I think that'd be really great,
It would be
obviously. I
fantastic.
mean, obviously, I would like that. Um, so maybe, hopefully, that maybe this free comic will get people's a little bit more interested because I do
I
have a little bit of material on the inside too.
oh, and I'm sure you've got lots more super antics ideas in your head as well, and hopefully you get more dreams where we can have more fantastic scenarios. But it's something that we can all appreciate, and I mean, yes, they are in that classic style. It's nostalgic. It's also historic to see these heroes the way they are. But there's lots more situations they could get into. There's lots more characters that you've not created yet or honored in your own unique way. So hopefully, I know I'm going to be getting as many copies as I possibly can, but I would love to for the world to see more of your work.
Well, thanks. You know, I should mention this, and I couldn't find anything that shows it really well, but I have an image that I don't know if people know I've done, even though I think a lot of people have seen it. Um, and again, it was something that I started with threadless, and then it kind of the image itself, which I'm about to show,
Okay.
kind of took on a life of its own. And you see a lot of people using low res copies and selling them themselves. But the only thing I could find in the house that I have is this notebook, but the image is of a zombie and his arms floating away.
Yes,
I don't know if you've ever seen this
I have.
anywhere.
Well, I've seen it on your blog for one, and I have
Oh,
seen it
okay.
on different websites and sort of some t-shirts as well. But it's an image that I have definitely seen over the internet over the years.
Yeah, it's on Redbubble and it's also on Threadless. If people wanted to find it, they need to just, I don't have it under my name. I just have it under Angel Robot. Um, so you couldn't find it by using my name, unfortunately. That's probably a something I maybe I should fix, but
Yeah,
um, by Angel Robot, because a lot of people will take that image and then just use it as their own. And I try to, ride and get them taken down, and I do
Mhm.
sometimes, but I don't all the time. But if nothing else, you want one by me because the quality is a lot higher.
Exactly, and that is it. I'm not a fan of when art gets shared and reaches masses and the creators or influencers that have inspired the artwork don't get the credit they deserve. So whenever I see any of your work shared on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, I have to sort of tag you in it and say, don't forget, this is the person that created it.
Well,
Acknowledge
thank you.
them. One of the big ones that I see get shared a lot, Kerry, is the Welcome to Metropolis poster with a Batman
Oh,
sort of
really?
with his mustache. It's a favorite one. When there was a moment a few years ago when Henry Cavill had a mustache for one of the Mission Impossible films, and
Right.
that was shared a lot when Henry Cavill had that notorious mustache, and many places were sharing it. And I was like, don't forget, this is the person that created this artwork,
Well, I
because
always appreciate that. That was for Mad, by the way. That piece of art was for Mad.
and I mean, yeah, it was a fantastic poster. I saw that the Superman Museum in Metropolis, Illinois, they did share that out, and
Oh, really?
they did, and they gave you credit. You would hope that the Superman shop and museum would give credit to the artists, and of course they did. I went to the Superman celebration a few years ago in 2018 and 19, and I was hoping to see a big Metropolis poster there in the same way, but didn't see your one. But they have got one there. Um, what's next for you, Kerry? What's going on in your busy schedule?
Well, the last year or so, I've been kept pretty busy with commissions. Um, you can find me on Instagram under my name, and you can see a lot of the commissions there. But that keeps me pretty busy. I'm working on a short story for a comic that hasn't been announced yet. Uh,
Okay.
I am thinking about doing a Kickstarter, which I've never done, but I could take, it would be golden age Super-Antics. So I would use all the public domain, there's a lot of public domain characters that people are aware of now.
Mm.
They're the old characters from, the 40s and some from the 50s. And just take those and just kind of do the same kind of thing. I'd have to not, it couldn't be quite as character focused because people know that Batman has a bat cave, and all this kind of stuff
Mm.
um, that I riff off of. So these would have to be more about, um, I just have to be a little bit more clever, I think, to
I
make
think
them without knowing the characters necessarily.
I think you've got that in you, and I think if a Kickstarter was to come out for that, I would certainly support it. And I know that there are people all around the world that want to see more of your artwork. So I have seen those commissions. I've been trying to rack my brain of what I would like for you to create for me because I've got a few ideas because I would simply adore to have some of your artwork on my wall one day. And not only that, but I love the animated GIFs you've created on your blog. They are just it's a simple little thing, but they make me smile so much. One especially I've got handy by the side of me was the recreation of this iconic cover, Superman #1, which is delightful to see him jump into frame and then have his cape wrapped around his face and see him cascade to the ground below him. When did that begin for you, Kerry?
The
When did that
gift.
yeah, that idea, that sort of
I can
making
tell
those.
you exactly when it started, and this is going to be odd, maybe, but I worked at Hallmark for decades.
Mhm.
I worked in the licensing department, by the way. So we did Marvel and DC and Disney and Warner Brothers and all sorts of stuff, Harry Potter. But we would create, you know what a lenticular, lenticular is also
Yes,
called, I think, a magic picture. It's when you've got an image and you tilt it and it's
move to the side.
yeah, a very short animation. So we would create lenticular cards, and I would personally have created some. And to kind of get a feel for what they would look like, I would create a GIF in Photoshop, which is a very brief animation that looped, but you could see what the lenticular would look like. And I actually really love doing that. So one day it occurred to me, I thought, you know what? There's a lot of cool old comic covers. It'd be fun to just take an old comic cover and just do an animation of it. And you have to choose the right cover because it has to be something that can loop. It can't be, people running towards you or anything. So everything I've done, I've tried to find something that would loop well, look natural. Um, and that Superman cover, he didn't fly back then. He just jumped, and I thought, and one day I just saw it. And like a lot of things, I just saw it and thought, that's a pretty graceful for just jumping high in the air. And I thought it'd be kind of funny if it wasn't graceful. So they caught him just at that moment where he looks graceful and then he just falls back down. So that's
Uh,
where that came from.
I think I saved the GIF once, and I wanted to sort of to see that the exact moment when you could see his face change from a big sort of courageous smile to seeing his head wrapped in the cape, and then sort of the downward look as he was going down to the ground. But you created that one. You also created Action Comics #1. My obviously my biggest wish list for a comic that I do have, but
Mm.
you created that as the alarm was going off and it was smashing against the rock.
And again, that's just me. And that wasn't a gift. That was a Super-Antics. I didn't name them all Super-Antics. I think I named that one Man of Action just
Mm.
because it seemed a little different than the others. But um, again, I just saw that image one day and I thought, why is he destroying that car anyway? I mean, there's an in story reason why he's doing it, but it's
Mhm.
not really well known. I can't even think what it was. I know they were crooks. But it just occurred to me, it's like sometimes I'd like to smash a car, going off. But
But it's those iconic covers. Back, when a comic was sold, you would see the front cover of it that jumped off the newsstands, as it were, and that being, one of the most iconic covers ever recreated in that hilarious way of Superman smashing it against the rock. But you've created other ones. There's that one that I do see get shared quite a lot is Spider-Man punching Superman in the chest over and over
oh,
again.
the
Yeah.
gift. And again, that's just me. Um, Actually, the reason I even saw that image is on my blog quite a while ago. It occurred to me once we got into the 2000s
Mm.
that it occurred to me that the comics that say Battle of the Century, they all took place in the 20th century, the 1900s. And I go, that century is over. So for all these comic covers that say Battle of the Century, only one of them is right. They can't all be right. So I did a little research and found all the comics that said Battle of the Century on the cover or Bout of the Century, and then got them all, got them off eBay or got them here or there. I actually was able to find physical copies of all of them. And then I reviewed each of them to determine which was actually the bout of the century. So that Superman and Spider-Man comic that came out
Mm.
uh, said Battle of the Century on it. So I was like I was finding out, looking at it, figuring out what I wanted to scan in. And when I saw that image, I go, that would make a fun GIF. And again, you know, it's a loop, it's
I
just
could, I
easy.
could, I could watch it for hours, Kerry. I can hear the sound effects when I see that one as well. But it's again, it's something that I can now, whenever I think of Superman and those funnier moments, I will think of you and those memories that you've helped create. So you have become part of the Superman legacy. What do you think if we were able to speak with those heroes, that is Jerry Seigel and Joe Shuster? What do you think they would think of the way that you've created, well, recreated their creation?
I've never thought of that, but I would hope they would like it. I
I
mean,
think so.
it's done with love. I think you can see that I'm not making fun of the characters really as much as I'm just having fun with them. It used to be when comics used to be superheroes. There used to be a lot of comedy, and westerns and romance and horror and all these different things. And over the years, it's just all disappeared to mainly, well, I shouldn't say that totally because I know that um, graphic novels for young children are huge and they have a
Mm.
lot of different subject matters. But when you talk about DC and Marvel and such, um, it's just superheroes. And I would even go farther saying it's not just reduced to superheroes, but it's reduced to, um, how do I say this? Rough and tumble superheroes. Ever since Watchmen and ever since Dark Knight Returns, a lot of comics thinks they need to be kind of grim and gritty. And I know it's a cliche thing to say to criticism, and I realize there's comics that aren't like that, but a lot of them still are. So all those categories just got reduced down to something small. So part of me wants to bring back something like in another world, um, superheroes became more comedic. Um, eh, I don't 100% agree with myself saying this because I know that Marvel movies have brought back humor and a little bit more lightheartedness and stuff. But uh, when I first started doing them in my head, I'm thinking, they could just use more humor. I loved books when I was a kid, Inferior Five. I don't know how familiar you are with them. There's a DC book that was a humor book. Plop. You remember Plop? I love Plop. You just don't see stuff like that anymore because
It's
there's not a market for it as much since they don't sell in grocery stores and stuff.
no.
And you know,
So in the UK, my introduction to comics were the Beano and the Dandy, which were two weekly comics that came out. They weren't necessarily about superheroes. It was just about normally naughty children in school and interesting characters. But it was my introduction into reading, and from that, my love for comics came from that. And they were
mhm.
definitely a lot of fun. That was the thing. And then I can see over the decades how the more zany Superman stories have changed over the years. I love those adventures where Superman would fight robots or dinosaurs or get himself into scrapes where he would eat too much food or something crazy would happen. We don't
Right.
really see that as much anymore. So that's why I think with your free comic book day and hopefully the work that we get inside it could lead to you being able to tell more funny Superman stories because I know you've got lots more in you.
Yeah, I hope comic shops order it. Because they can choose which ones they order and which ones they don't. And a lot of comic shops don't sell Mad.
Mm,
I don't think. Which is too bad. I mean, Mad's Market, it used to be when I first started working for them, they were still in the newsstand. But now direct market only.
Yeah.
So you don't see them in grocery stores and stuff. So, and that's the reason there's a lot of reprints in Mad now instead of all new material.
I I say when I did have the chance to find a copy of Mad in the wild, as it were, it would be very exciting for me to be able to fill up my suitcase full of comics. And I can remember getting my first ever Mad comic and doing the folding on the back page. That was a big deal for me, of
Yeah.
folding in that back page and seeing what jokes lied within that picture. But it was it was some fantastic memories reading those comics, and I've collected a few of the Superman ones from over the years, especially when the Superman the movie in '78 came out. They had a Mad copy for that, which was, again, it doesn't show Superman in his brightest moments. They do make quite a few easy gags about the superhero and the movie, whereas that's something that you haven't done. As we said, you still respect their legacy. You respect the character behind the cape, which I love.
Can I plug something?
Of course you can, sir.
Um, because talking about super antics, taking cliche situations and finding the humor in them is what this. I did a comic years ago called Halo and Sprocket. They were single issues and they were in black and white. And basically, it's taking everyday life and treating it like super antics. So you've got the characters are an angel and a robot, and they live with this woman. They all share a house, and it's not religious in any way. But Halo looks at everything kind of metaphysically, and Sprocket looks at everything through sheer logic. And then you've got the human experience, which is somewhere in between the two and hardly ever matches up exactly with them. So the original issues were in black and white. I actually went and colored
Oh
the whole
wow.
thing. The art's a little different. I was working at Hallmark when I first did them, so I kept the art really simple, just so I'd have time to do it. Um, but it's about everyday life, only it's the same. I use the same brain that I use for Super Antics to make this.
Is
So
this
anyway,
available? Is this available from your website, or can we find this on
this is
Amazon?
available on Amazon.
Okay, good to know.
So it's a print on demand, Amazon. Um, the easiest way to find it is to type my name into Amazon, because if you type the title, it just gives you all sorts of other stuff. And
Okay.
you'll also see other stuff by me, including Hale and Sprocket, but they're single issues or older material. This is the newest material. It's everything. It's in color. I edited it somewhat with certain jokes or things that I didn't quite set with me. Um, Added a little bit more art to the backgrounds just because originally I didn't have that much. But anyway, I think if people enjoy Super Antics, oh, this is also, I think, a good book for people that don't normally read comics because it's a bunch of short stories. So a lot of the feedback I've gotten over the years is, oh, the only comic my wife will read, or because they're short, they're about everyday life, so there's nothing to know except um, a reviewer once said he recommended it to anyone who suspect they might be human, and I thought that was a great line.
Wow, that's a fantastic blurb. Yes,
So
I'm
anyway, that's my self promotion here.
good. Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna, when this podcast goes live, so
Ah,
so anybody can sort of get this on Amazon, can't they? That's the thing. That's the best place to get it from. I will be getting a copy for myself because I need to have your work in my collection. But I will also be I shall host a giveaway for a copy of that book for one
oh,
lucky
that'd be
winner.
nice.
I want the world to see more Kerry Callen, and the best way to do that is to get it out there. And for creating a story, as you said, that would get other people into comics, that's why that's important, as is Free Comic Book Day. It gets these comics out there. If we don't read these comics, we're not going to get the stories we want. And if we stop reading about our heroes, they will cease to exist. And I don't want that to happen at all.
No, that would be bad.
No, it would be
Oh,
very bad.
actually, wait a few years, and a lot of them will be in public domain, and you
Happy
can.
yes, Superman is coming up to that as well. So there we go. Thank you so much for your time today. I do have one more question for you, but before I ask that, where can people find you online, sir?
I have a blog, which I'm terrible at keeping up on just because I'm busy. The best place to see my art is probably Instagram.
Mhm.
Um, you can follow me on Facebook. Um, and I put a lot of stuff on there. Probably to see Probably Instagram. The only downside to Instagram is when I first started posting Super-Antics, I would just post the entire page and they're kind of small, and then I slowly figured out, oh, if I do a new one, I need to do them one panel at a time and then you can scroll through
You
them.
can,
So I
yes.
basically started doing that, but not for the early stuff. So I think some people just go to my Facebook page and then just start scrolling through it because it's mostly my artwork is what's
But
on
that's
there.
and that's it. But I mean, on your blog, everything there is archived as well, and
Well, that's
hours
true.
I've spent hours going through that and enjoying those works of art in wonderful HD. And all those links to your websites and social media will be in this podcast, Kerry. But my final question to you today is one that I really like asking people from all over the world, and that is, what does Superman mean to you?
Wow. What does Superman mean to me? Well, I know he means a lot to you. Um, I have had a mixed relationship with him over the year. I love Superman now. As a kid, I really liked him. Once I got old enough, I mentioned earlier that I bought just mostly DC comics because Marvel had continued stories and I didn't want to
Mhm.
not get it. When I got old enough to drive at 16, I became a Marvel. Well, actually, it was right before I could drive because I actually got a subscription to some Marvel comics. So um, there was a period where I didn't like I still kind of like Batman, but I didn't really like Superman much because I was so heavily into Marvel as a teenager. I think a lot of people are. But then because I just buy one or the other. It's like I either buy Marvel or I'm either buy DC. And then it
Mm.
occurred to me probably when I was early 20s, it's like, hey, I can buy both. I don't know why I had a mindset of thinking it had to be one or the other. So I started loving Superman again. I mean, obviously he's the original. All this wouldn't exist without him. Um, Trying to think of my favorite Superman stories.
Mm.
I don't feel like I'm answering your question very
You're
well.
talking about Superman. I could listen to you for hours, Kerry. So if this turns into a 5 hour podcast, then so be it.
It's you can kind of tell by my strips that maybe I kind of see him as the ultimate superhero because when he's in a strip, he's the leader.
Mm.
He's an undisputed leader, um, and I'm and I see him as the most popular too. I've had this Super-Antics strip. I haven't had got to have I'll tell you about it because I never had an ending for it. But I wanted to have something about Superman reading in a meeting about Washington D.C. wants a couple of representatives from the Justice League to go, um, and that's when the Atom, who I love, the Golden Age Atom, perks up about. Well, obviously one of them should be me, but being the most popular. But I don't know if the other one should be Superman, maybe Batman, maybe Wonder Woman, because just for variety. Um, but I don't know where that goes. Sometimes I get ideas, I don't have an ending, so I don't do them. But I think it's obvious that Superman is the leader and the most popular. I'm really looking forward to James Gunn's Superman movie because I think he's going to get it right. I was so disappointed. I just didn't connect with Zack Snyder's Superman. The thing that drew me out the most, I think, out of the whole thing was when Paul Kent was like, "No, no, just let people die. You shouldn't save them." I think about exposed because to me, the thing I love about Superman is he was molded, and maybe it's because I'm from the Midwest, but he was molded by the human value, good humans. He was molded by good human values. And that's a huge reason why he's the hero he is, and I love that about him. So anything that strays away from that, I dislike. So I'm
I'm
hoping James, and I think James Gunn's smart enough and understands that he'll get that, you know.
what he's been teasing so far, and the news that he's decided to share with people around the world, it's gotten a lot of people talking. But what I really admire with what James Gunn has been doing is he's recommending comics to people.
Mhm.
It's like, these are the stories that I'm taking references from. So if you want to know what the film's about, go and read these comics. And he's making comics become sold out again, and to go back into reprinting. So I'm on board with you with that one, Kerry. That possibly he should get you on board for the writing team. We can live and hope there, Kerry, for that.
By the way, I don't know if there's any truth to this,
Okay.
but do you know the Super Antics where Superman starts with something? Did I interrupt you?
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, no. You're fine.
Like it popped in my head. There's a Super Antics where Superman's like, "Oh, what do you think, Diana?" He's talking to Wonder Woman. What do you think? And then she goes off on every character because he's rubbing his chin. She says, I don't
Yes.
think you say you shave by bouncing lasers off a mirror, but I just think you can't grow a beard." And then she goes around the room and just insults every one of them. And then at the very end, she's like, "Oh, sorry, my lasso of truth got wrapped around my leg." And the reason I bring that up, and I don't know if it's truth to this, but the timing is perfect. When it came out was when Josh Wheaton took over the Justice League movie and was changing, the dialogue and adding scenes and stuff. And there's a scene in there where she sneaks her lasso of truth over to Aquaman without you seeing it on camera. You just
Correct.
hear her start talking honestly. And I've had a lot of people when that happened. A lot of people told me, "I think he probably got that from you," and I don't
It's
know.
it's
It's something anybody can think of, but
no, because it's a very niche joke, and I mean, Wonder Woman doesn't mean to be callous and very very open with her truths, as she does sort of, yeah, pick apart every superhero's little their insecurities, but she didn't mean to. But in the film, yeah, that did happen, and I did have that thought. You say this is very similar to a Super-Antics panel. So hopefully, at least we can get maybe in the new Superman Legacy, we can get you on that screen where it says "with thanks to." We can live in hope.
yeah.
Well, Kerry, thank you so much for your time today. I hope that Kickstarter happens. I really do. Look into that. If you need some help, there are people out there that will tell you the best way to go about that. Because I want to continue seeing your ideas and your thoughts and your dreams leave that wonderful brain and lighten up my day. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Hopefully in the future we can talk again, and who knows, maybe one day you'll be able to sign my mad comic when it hopefully gets into my possession on Free Comic Book Day. Kerry, thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for everything you do for the world of comics.
Again, thank you.